Welcome to Dad Space. Space for dads. For dads by dads, the podcast designed for you. Thank you for listening to Dad Space. Today we have on somebody from Newcastle, the other side of the world. Beautiful Australia. Alan Stevens is here. It's winter time there. It's summertime here. So we try to bring the warmth from Canada over to Australia today in the episode. Welcome to Dad Space. Let's gather around the campfire together and talk about the Campfire Project. Alan Stevens on Dad Space. Here we go. Super excited to have Alan Stevens on today on Dad Space. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming back. Make sure you hit that follow button and then you know every time we have a new episode come up. So Dad Space is growing. We're really happy with this. Happy to be a part of your world and happy to talk to somebody on the other side of the world from where we are here in Canada. Alan Stevens is here today and he gets into a place that's designed for men to have a safe space to speak, to be heard, and to listen. And he's created a place called the Campfire Project, which we talk about in the podcast. And his hashtag that he's using right now, We Together. We hear a lot about the Me Too and Me Men hashtag, but there's also another side of that is hashtag We Together. And in hashtag We Together, it's all about not what makes us different, but what makes us work together. And I love his theme and what he's talking about, and glad to share this with you here on Dad Space. Alan Stevens from the Campfire Project. Enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and reach out to Alan as well. Let him know you heard about him on the podcast. I'll have all of his contact information as well included with the podcast. And if this strikes a chord for you as a listener, you're looking for a safe place to speak and to be heard and to learn, Campfire Project might just be the right spot for you. Here it is on the Dad Space podcast. Thanks for listening. Here we go. Alan Stevens. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast. I have Alan Stevens with us today. Alan is on the other side of the world and enjoying winter, which seems interesting to me, being here in Canada. Alan, how are you today?
Pretty good, thanks. And yes, you're right. It's freezing over here at the moment.
Wow. So, like, it's almost Christmas time. No? What? No.
Our Christmas
we think of Santa and snow.
Our Christmases are very hot. Short sleeves and shorts in our Christmas, whereas I know in yours it's nice and snowy, or it's nice and cool.
Yeah. Excellent. So let everybody know where you are in the world.
Just north of Sydney in a place called Newcastle, about 160 kilometres north. So here in Australia.
Excellent. And this is where you were born and raised?
Born in Sydney and came to Newcastle in 1975 for a 5-month temporary transfer and never went back.
I never went back. There you go. So what do you love about where you live in the world? What can you tell people who have never been there? What would be that thing that just people would come and never leave?
Well, the main thing is, I would say, the lifestyle, but our beaches. Where I am, it's over the hill and there's a stretch of 12 different beaches you can select from. And also we're about 30 minutes from the vineyards now. So it's a tough life, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. So this being your colder part of the season, what is life like now for you guys?
More just going out to restaurants, catching up with friends, that sort of thing. We don't have, when we say it's cold, it's not your bitter cold that you get around the snow, but it's cold enough.
Yeah. To take away some of your beach time, maybe. And
that's it. Well, we still get down the beach, go for a walk, etc., but you usually get pushed along by the wind. But other than that, it's pretty good.
Excellent. Okay, so we met and chatted a little bit already, which I really appreciate that opportunity. Our podcast, Dad Space, is all about trying to encourage men to be a better example in life with their family, with their children, with their spouse, their partner, to themselves personally. And that journey of becoming a better all-around person for our community. can you let us know a little bit about what you're up to and how that would kind of relate? Because you're doing something on a global stage, helping men, and I really would love to kind of chat about that and introduce that to our listeners today.
Well, first of all, we talk about men stepping up and being better versions of themselves. The first thing that we need to be doing, because we're telling men that they need to do that, but we're not telling them how to do it. And we're putting a lot of extra load on their shoulders, which makes it even harder for them to do it. And I realized some time ago, because in my work, I'm a profiler and I teach people how to read people. And in that, working with men in particular, I knew a lot of them were frustrated in the workplace and frustrated in their home life as well, going, well, we thought our job was to go out and raise funds, but now we're told we're emotionally and physically absent. And on the work front, we're always on tender hooks about what we say because of the gender equality and the political correctness in particular. And so I realized that was causing a lot of men frustration. So I realized that men needed a safe place where they could come and tell their stories, to allow them to express themselves, and in that way for them to be able to find their way forward and to then step up as well. And that's when I created the Campfire Project.
So, excellent. So give me a little insight then about reading people. I'm curious about this. And maybe you're probably reading me, and now I'm feeling a little bit awkward. But just reading people, like what kind of things are some of our tells, maybe from a men's perspective?
Well, first of all, as far as reading people goes, there's different versions of it. We see a lot of it on CSI, The Mentalist, Lie to Me, those sort of shows, where it's all about lie detection. So looking at the micro expressions and secondly at the body language. But the most important thing is really using it to build stronger relationships. And where that starts is being able to recognize someone's personality. I used to work with psychometric profiling where you ask people questions, but I realized when you put people through questionnaires, they try and second guess what you're expecting to look for, what you're trying to find in them. And I did that with a group of people who were teaching currency trading, and none of their students made any money. So I profiled them with psychometric profiling. And when they went live, they were still losing money because I realized they didn't match their personalities. So we needed something where we could just look at somebody and understand their personality at a glance. And where psychometric profiling puts people in boxes, which I find is great for the person who wants to know generally how to talk to those other people, but it doesn't show respect to the other people of treating them as an individual. And we need to do that more and more. So the profiling I use is the facial features tell me your personality. And I can get that from your photographs because your facial features don't change overnight. And how that works, if you lift weights, you're going to build muscles. I do bicep curls, for instance. But if you, at the same time, everything we feel inside, we express outwardly, through our body language and expression. So you put that together when you're concentrating and working on things, you're going to pull expressions over and over. And the ridges and crevices you create on your face give away your personality. Then when I'm talking to you, I know how to change the way I like to be spoken to match the way that you do. You need to be spoken to. And then I've got the feedback from the body language and expressions that tell me, have I read you right? Is there something emotionally going on? And yes, are you telling me the truth? And I teach people as far as finding the truth out, is not as a lie detector as we see on TV. I use it as a truth seeker because I want to know why you've got something going on, why you're not telling the truth, what's emotionally going on in the background. Because if I know that, I can then help you. It's not about catching liars. Mm-hmm. Even though I've worked with the police, I don't focus on catching liars. I want to help you find the truth.
So in your relationships with your family and your friends, are they like, come on, Alan, stop doing that. Stop reading me. Let's just have fun. And you're just like, interesting. I don't know if you could shut that off. Well,
so. The micro expressions, if I go to a party, I'm going to turn it off. Because I don't want to know whether somebody's telling the truth or not. Everybody's, embellishing stories and everything else. And I'm not the lie police. What it comes down to, though, the facial features, though, that tells me your personality. And the more I understand that, then the better the communication you and I are going to have. And you're going to have more fun and I'm going to have more fun. And we'll have a better relationship between the two of us. So that I never turn off. There's no reason to turn it off. Because if I did, I'd be treating you like everybody else, which is judging you based on their past experiences, which is extremely disrespectful to you.
Interesting. All right. So that I found that very interesting, and I'm sure we could have a 10-hour podcast just on that topic alone. But let's jump over to the Campfire Project. This is what we originally started talking about when we met. This began, I believe we said, about 4 years ago. Can you give us a little insight to what the Campfire Project is and kind of maybe how it got started?
Okay. Well, as I said, it started because of the men I was working with in business and the way they were feeling. To give them a safe place where they could tell their stories, I thought was most important, because being able to hold a space for them, be the eyes and ears that they haven't been able to get from anybody else, to have somebody just listen to them and not judge them, not counsel them, not tell them whether they were right or wrong, but just be the ears and eyes that they've never had. And so by bringing men into the group, and by the way, it was never just a men's group, because I wanted women to be able to hear how men could speak when they felt safe to do so. At the same time, I wanted the men to know that there were women listening to them and to be able to interact with those women. And so it's a closed group. Anybody who comes in has to answer 2 questions, and both questions are really the same question, rephrased. Will you respect everybody? And if people say, well, you've asked the same question twice, why'd you do that? I said, there's your 2 chances, you don't get a third. Anybody's disrespectful, they're out straight away. So it made it safe for men to be able to open up and share their stories. And so we started it just under 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years in August. And we've had, well, first of all, I brought the men in and interviewed them one-on-one, about 30 men up in total up to that point. Then brought them into panel discussions, where they could talk about things like pornography, masculinity, femininity, the toxicity of both of those. Not so much the toxicity of masculinity or femininity, but the toxicity of humans. And because I don't believe that we should be talking about toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. It's a behaviour right across the board. And so we had that safe place for the men. We had the panel discussions. And that was when the women started sending me personal messages going, we've never heard men talk like this before and we love it. Is there any way we can get involved in the conversations? So the men led the way, and the women then stepped in and started coming into the one-on-ones, and then coming and joining in the panel discussions. Now we've had close to 500 hours of one-on-ones and panel discussions, and not once has there been any sexism, racism or bigotry, and not once has anybody been disrespectful to anybody else. And we've covered, extra subject. We went into looking at menstruation, menopause. Does size matter in the bedroom? No subjects off the table. Proving that when you set the agenda and people realise that it's fairly strict, but it's strict for their safety. Because if you come in and tell your story, you want to know you're being protected and looked after. And when people realise that, it allowed them to open up. It allowed other people to understand them. And it doesn't matter about someone's gender, their religion, their culture. Everybody's welcome, and everybody's welcome to put their hand up to share their story. And so far, we've got 2,300 people in there. We've had all those conversations. It's become a global movement under the hashtag #WeTogether. And it's doing what Me Too and Men Too could never do, because both of those were absolutely necessary to highlight the problems in life. But they were never going to be the solutions to the problems, because they're pointing the fingers at the problems all the time. They're not designed to fix the problems. And that's why I thought, right, men and women need to come together, and together they can solve the problems.
It's a great hashtag, Alan. That's really smart. WeTogether. You're completely right. Instead of being what makes us different from each other, then what makes us work together
That's
better.
it. See, we're complementary.
It's smart, very smart.
We're complementary. We're different to each other, and that's a beautiful part of it. We're stronger together than we are separate. And it's just a matter of, as a profile, I recognise 4 things, and I've been looking at this for more than 2 decades. I've always realised in my life, as well as I was growing up, everybody's suffering, and everybody has or is suffering. Everybody wears a mask. Everybody pretends they're not wearing a mask, because that's what I do, is see through those masks. But we're also a combination of all our childhood sufferings and rewards. So everything that we've been through in life creates who we are today. And with that, everybody has got some issues here or there. It just depends on how strong those issues are and what our feelings are today as to where we are on the mental health scale. Because we're all on it. It just depends on which end we're on today and in this moment. Mm-hmm. And so once we realise that, and we realise that there's all the different genders, all the different religions and cultures, there's similarities in the desire of what we want. We want to belong. We want to feel that we're valued, that we have a place. All of those things are similar. At the same time, everybody is different. There's no two personalities on the planet that are identical. And therefore, everybody's got a story which is different to everybody else. And therefore, their story is valuable. And once we start appreciating that, and we start listening to other people and understand them, we get rid of our fear. When we get rid of our fear, we get rid of our bigotry, sexism, and racism.
And we're together.
That's it.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. So the one thing I think we chatted about in the past as well is that as men, maybe we don't understand how powerful our voice is. We don't exercise our voice. And in that situation, we tend to lose our voice in the public forum where other people will step in and speak for us or speak on our behalf or anticipate what we need. But men aren't speaking up in a similar fashion and saying exactly what we need. And are you seeing some of that in your conversations from the men's
we're finding, I found a majority of men were keeping it to themselves. They didn't feel it was their place, or they'd, be always, men were, in today's age, are extremely worried about saying the wrong thing and being misjudged. And when you're worried about saying the wrong thing, that's when you end up saying the wrong thing, simply because your mind's focused on that area. And so that's when issues happen. And so that causes frustration. So when men feel that they can't speak, that if they open their mouth, they're going to be caught for being sexist or racist. And with that, they shut down. And when you shut down, you're pushing those emotions down, because men are just as emotional as women. The trouble with us is that we push it down and we hold it down. And when it comes out like a volcano. It's a pressure cooker. Yeah. You can't keep it out. You've got to learn to let it out and have conversations. But I know my generation, and probably yours as well, we're all about told, suck it up, be tough and all the rest of it. Boys don't cry and men don't cry. Yes, we do. But the trouble is we're crying inside and nobody's listening to it. Nobody's hearing it. And it just gets too much for some men and their behaviour becomes undesirable. So the more we're able to let them have the
absence of and then the absence of a safe place like the Campfire Project.
That's it.
Where you can safely speak out and share, even if you're incorrect in your thoughts, at least you're able to share them and get some feedback and some guidance and some support to help you navigate your thoughts.
Yeah, because if somebody tells me their story, people say, well, what's the interview like? And I go, well, I start out by, we record it on Zoom, first of all. It's not there for anybody else to see the one-on-ones. We do that one-on-one first of all. It's recorded on Zoom. I introduce the person as if people are watching. And then I ask them one question, and that is, well, this is what you're doing today. Tell us your story. How did you get to doing what you're doing today? And at that point, I just sit there and I go quiet. I virtually shut up because I allow them to speak. If they're finding it difficult, then I'll try and ask a few questions and draw them out. But while they're speaking, I won't say anything because I know their unconscious mind is directing their conscious mind in what they need to know. And sometimes it's been 45 minutes before I've said anything. And people will come back to me and say, that was the best conversation I've had. But when you listen to it later on, you'll hear I spoke at the beginning, I spoke at the end, and it was all you in between. But it was a best conversation because it was their unconscious mind talking to them. And that was the thing. My job was to hold their space, not tell them what they were doing right or wrong or anything else. I have no right to do that. Their story is their story. What they feel, their feelings, have absolutely right to those feelings, whatever they might be, because it's their life. And so once I started showing people that they had that right, it's not because I heard one person say many years ago that it was up to the community to give the men permission to speak, to tell their stories. I saw red with that when I went, no, it's the community's responsibility to create a safe place where men can then come and give themselves permission to tell their stories. It's got nothing to do with anybody else giving permission, because anybody who thinks that, they're living in their ego. They think they're better than everybody else. Well, sorry, you're not. And so once I've finished the one-on-one, I always ask the person, I go, right, we've done that. Are you happy with it? Are you willing to have other people listen to it? If they say yes, it gets aired in the Campfire Project. And then when they say to me, well, what, and that's in a closed group, of course, and then they say to me, well, what happens if I say no? I say, I'll hit the delete key. And they go, hasn't that wasted your time? I go, no, my job was to hold your space so that you could tell your story. We've done that. Job's done. If others get to hear it and learn from your story and that, then that's a bonus for them. But so far, we had 2 people that, one, we had problems with the internet, so they cancelled that one and we redid it again another time. And another one of the women, her husband was coming in and she was a bit apprehensive about one of the things she said. So we took it down, but she came back and did another one anyway. So you might as well say we've had a 100% success rate with people sharing their stories. And most of them were saying, I've never told anybody this stuff in my life. And you can see their shoulders, the tension just drop away. They just relax. And you go, they've just taken that weight off their shoulders. I haven't. They have in their story.
I love how you say, Alan, you're holding a space for people. You're not coming as someone with all the answers and you speak for a minute and I'll talk to you for 45 minutes about all the things you need to fix in your life. You're just creating the space and allowing people to speak.
There's so many people
powerful.
On LinkedIn. They say that the research has shown that when somebody starts talking about an issue, it takes about 19 seconds before somebody jumps in and gives them advice. We see it over Facebook all the time. People jumping in and making comments. As soon as somebody puts up a thing, they're in giving advice. How much information you can get in 19 seconds? And from, say, a small paragraph of it writing on a Facebook post, how can you understand what was really going on? You don't know the person or anything else. That's just ego. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the old saying, 1 finger pointing and 3 fingers pointing back at where the real problem is. When people are telling you what you should be doing, those 3 fingers are really telling them that's what they should be doing. And so I don't have the right to judge anybody and tell them what their life story or anything else. As I say to people, we've got 2 eyes, 2 ears and 1 mouth, and use them in that proportion. And when we use our mouth, ask questions. Ask every possible question you can think of. Listen to what they say. That will give you more questions to ask. But when you've exhausted all the questions, ask 1 more question. And people go, how in the world can I ask 1 more question after I've asked all the questions I can think of? Well, that question is, from what you've been telling me, this is what I'm understanding. Have I got it right? If you have got it right, the person will tell you that. They now trust you. They know they've been listened to. You'll see the weight drop off their shoulders. If you haven't got it right, you're into a conversation. But they know that you showed a lot of interest, so it's a win either way. When you jump in and start giving advice, you've lost in that moment. As I say, when 2 people are having a conversation, the person who talks the most loses.
So, Alan, how do people, if they're listening to this and they're like, the Campfire Project is exactly what I need. I live wherever I am in the world at this moment. I'm listening to this podcast and I want to know, what does it look like for somebody to sign up or get involved in this? What does day 1 look like? How does this all work?
Well, we've got a website, which is thecampfireproject.com.au. If they go to that website, they'll find a number of little videos. One that talks about the Campfire Project, another one that talks about the one-on-ones, how they go about, and then the third one is how the panel discussions work. People check that out. There's some information more about the background on the second page. If they then decide they want to come in and check out the Campfire Project, there's a Facebook logo there. They just click on that. They'll come into the Campfire Project group page on Facebook. Then they can just have a look around and decide whether they just want to sit in the background and observe it and get comfortable with it all and, realise that, yes, what I've said here today is all true. Then they can put their hand up to do a one-on-one. And in the website, there's 3 of us who do the one-on-ones. There's myself, There's one of the younger guys, he's in his 40s, that's Scott Carson. And we've got a lady up in Queensland, Angela Heiser, who also runs the one-on-ones, and the three of us also do panel discussions as well. So they can then look and pick, look through our profiles and go, okay, which one do I want to do my one-on-one with? And they can book into our calendar for that. Once they've done a one-on-one, then they can put their hands up to come into panel discussions where we'll talk about all sorts of subjects. And they can come up with subjects that they want to talk about, and we'll get a panel together with people who want to talk about that subject. At the same time, if they happen to be a coach or a professional, they can then advertise their projects, and if they've got a new book they've written, they can advertise that all free of charge in the Campfire Project. But the criteria is they have to have done a one-on-one, showing everybody the respect of saying this is who I am. And if they've done that, then they can come in and share their story, and then from there join the panel discussions and advertise what they're doing as well. And I'm looking for all the other men's groups and women's groups to come in and join us, because I'd really love the leaders of those groups to come in and tell their stories so we can advertise their groups to the world, but also advertise them together, especially by bringing them into panel discussions together. As I know, if somebody's running a group, I guarantee they're going to go through tough times. And when they do, who do they turn to for support? Well, they get to know the other group leaders of other networks and other groups. Then they've got a peer group that they can call when they're going through tough times. So I'm into not just networking together, but network building them all as well.
And really building that community within the Campfire Project, but also, like you're mentioning, outside of it as well. It's a great connection point for a lot of people to come in, because in a podcast setting, we always tend to hear about all the things we should do. We should be this, we should read that book, we should do this, but this is something you can do. It's a little different. You can actually do this and be a part of this community and connect with people who have, if not the answers, they're people who can listen and interact and give you that kind of space to speak freely. That's what I'm really curious about, and I'm finding quite interesting about what you're offering. It's unique.
So the word educate is, its true meaning is to draw out of somebody. It's the same thing here. The answers that people need, they already know at an unconscious level. Our job, by creating that safe place, allows their unconscious mind to talk to their conscious mind and let it know what it's been searching for. And so it's probably the best therapy you can get, because most people, when you're giving advice, regardless of whether they're professionals or not, they've got their own biases in there and they're really telling their story. And so the best way I found was let the person, by creating a safe place, just facilitate so that they can find their answers themselves. And once they find the answers themselves, they take ownership of it. If you tell them what they should do, they may walk out of there going, yeah, I'll do that. But how many people do it? Very few.
Yeah.
It's got to be something that they've understood and they've really worked out for themselves. And the more you can create and facilitate the space for them to do that, the more you're going to get those results.
Mm-hmm. So, Alan, as people are listening to this podcast, again, designed for dads by dads, just speaking to men and kind of encouraging men to, like we mentioned at the beginning, to step up in their community and to be that person that we sometimes shy away from being, and to find our voice where we've been quiet. What is your message based on what you've heard and experienced within the Campfire Project that could help a man listening today to take that first step into a community like this?
Just realizing that there's always answers to every problem we have. And when people feel that they're totally lost, then it's doing things differently to what you've done before. At the end of the day, the most important thing I've ever learnt in my life was the next thing I learned after I thought I knew everything. And so always looking for the solutions and going, rightio, if I can't find them on my own, who can help me? And the thing is that if you do put your hand up for help, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of you realizing that you need some support to be able to make the changes to become the better person or the person you want to become. And you focus on the future, what you want to become, because if you don't do that, then you're robbing yourself and you're robbing everyone around you. And so when you realize that, if you go, hey, I don't like my life, I want to be better, I want to be a better father, I want to be a better partner, then focus on the outcome of what you want and you take the steps to do that. And if you do that, you'll always move forward. You can't do it on your own. I learned that one myself.
Exactly.
So, and my job in everything that I do is, as a leader, is to make myself redundant. And that is to help other people to step up to do what I'm doing and hopefully do it not just as well, but do it better than I've done it, so that I can then move on and do other things. And then that way, all the people that we help, one of the things is we know that once they've been through things, there's a desire to sort of pass it forward. So all those people worrying about, I don't think I'm good enough, I guarantee that if you don't think you're good enough, I always say to people, get over it. If you think you're too good, get over yourself. So I say, rightio, if you don't think you're good enough, stand around some people who will listen to you, and I guarantee they will turn around and tell you that you're much better than you think you are. And you're only robbing yourself by not allowing other people to share some time with you. Because for me to sit there and listen to other people, it's an honour, it's a gift to me to be able to sit there and hear their stories. I might give them a gift of my time, but they give me a gift of their experience and knowledge that increases my knowledge and experience as well. So I'm very grateful for everybody who's shared their story with me.
Excellent. So Alan Stevens is here from Newcastle, sharing the campfireproject.com.au, a great way for men to not only just think about the things we should do, but actually take action and take a step forward in a community where safety is there for you to speak freely and to find the support you need to find your voice. Alan, it's so great to have you on. I wish you well. I hope that many people get in touch with you through the podcast and reach out and experience what you're providing at the Campfire Project. And that hashtag We Together is powerful, and we're going to be definitely sharing that out.
Thank you very much, Dave. Much appreciated.
Excellent. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Dad Space today. Go check us out on all of our social media, YouTube, all that great stuff. You can find us as Dad Space Podcast. Real simple. Dad Space Podcast, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, even YouTube. Email us, dadspacepodcast@gmail.com. We're always looking for great guests to come on the podcast. If you have any feedback for us, what do we do good? What do we need to work on? Let us know here at Dad Space. Looking forward to connecting with you on the next episode. It's coming up right now. Just let this keep playing and it'll automatically come. Follow us on your podcast app for more. Cheers. To you, Dad. Thank you.